episode 267 of the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. It's the final countdown. Let's start the show.
We are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift.
The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Clear leadership.
And we are, as a people,
not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual.
Opposed to secret society.
But ours was a nation of the ballot, not the bullet.
And a secret procedure.
As a people, we cannot afford to let any group of citizens or any individual citizen live or labor under conditions which are injurious to the commonwealth.
Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities, all pledging allegiance under the same proud flag to this big, bold country that we love. That's what I see. That's the America I know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Welcome to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Thank you for liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and telling your friends about the pod. Hope to God you're checking out my YouTube channel at the Aggressive Progressive on YouTube. If you like me here, you're going to love me there. You get to see me doing this stuff. So check me out on YouTube. All right, we're in it now. 9 days, 8 days, depending on when you're listening to or watching this broadcast, if you will. We're in it, right? We're in the final moments of this election. It's all coming down to this. If you think that you have a great idea of what's going to happen, you are probably wrong. I mean, maybe. I know I have been saying I think I know what's going to happen, and I still stand by my projection. And I'm gonna break down for you for a minute why I think Harris will win. You know the old saying, demographics is destiny, right? Trump's largest block of voters, where he dominates, are uneducated white men, right? That is his number one block. No college white men, right? Working class whites. Used to be a domain of the Democrats. Donald Trump, Democrats had been losing support for years before Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has definitely sped their decline in that demographic. Well, that is a demographic that has been shrinking at a very quick pace. There are 1.5% fewer working class white men in Pennsylvania, working class whites all over. There are 3% fewer in Michigan. There are 3.5% fewer in Wisconsin. The number of college-educated whites is growing. And that is a demographic that it is appearing in the polls right now that Kamala Harris is winning. And this number is not pollster data. This is census data from, recent census data. I mean, as recently as this year. Demographics are destiny. Now, you want to tell me that Donald Trump is making significant inroads with black and Latino men? I don't believe it, first of all. I would also tell you that they are a very small portion of the electorate in states like Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan. I mean, less so in Michigan and Pennsylvania. I mean, they are a substantial block, but not a tilting block. And the inroads that Democrats have made with black women, Joe Biden won 90% of black women, and there is talk that maybe Kamala Harris gets 95% of black women this year, who are, by the way, more likely to vote than black men, and Latino women are more likely to vote than Latino men. Sorry. So demographics are destiny, right? So I'm looking at the polls, and I'm looking at the demographics in the polls, and I'm looking at the trends in the polls. Ipsos came out with a poll this morning, ABC News Ipsos poll, had Kamala up 4% nationally, and 49% of people in that poll said that Donald Trump is a fascist. Now, 8% of them, surprisingly, said they'd still vote for him. God help us. I know that my grandparents both escaped fascism in Europe. from both Italy and Germany, and then went back and fought against fascism in Europe as Americans. How soon we forget, right? I mean, I get it. We weren't alive, most of us weren't alive during the 30s and 40s. We didn't see the horrors of fascism, but we read about it. We all have the History Channel. We've all watched films about the horrors of fascism. We should be very, very well aware of it. Yet 8% of us think that it's okay. Oh, he's a fascist, yes, but I'm going to vote for him anyway because, gas prices are too high. By the way, gas prices are lower now than they were in 2018. Just for the record, gas prices are lower now than they were before the pandemic. Yes, there was $1 a gallon gas during the pandemic because nobody was driving their cars, right? They were giving away crude oil if you could take it. That's how bad things were in 2020 when Donald Trump was president of the United States. And no, it wasn't just that there was a global pandemic. It was that it was mishandled by him, particularly him. And it destroyed our economy. So for those of you in the 8% that see him as a fascist, but you're concerned about your 401k, look at your freaking 401k. Okay. When's the last time you looked at it? It's never been higher than it was right now. Okay. You're worried about what? What are you worried about in the economy? Because yes, there was definitely inflation during the last 4 years, and that inflation has come way down now. Way down. It's up to the private sector to lower their prices, and only one candidate says that they'll investigate that, and that's Kamala Harris, as to why they're not. So, I think the trend is moving in Harris's direction. I think that the demographic trends have already moved in her direction. I think that she is going to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and I also think she's going to win North Carolina and Arizona. I'm a little dubious on Georgia, but that is a flip a coin there. The early vote numbers are tremendous in Georgia. And of all the early voters, most of them are women. 62% as of today. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Welcome back. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Of course, watch me on News Nation. It's News for All Americans. I'll be on there all the time between now and Election Day. And if you haven't subscribed to my Aggressive Progressive YouTube channel, please subscribe to it now. If you're watching me on it right now as I'm doing this podcast, you can click right there. And you could just you could subscribe yourself. But if you ever wanted to know what I looked like when I was going nuts on the radio or on a podcast, go to the Aggressive Progressive at the Aggressive Progressive on YouTube and subscribe today. I think it's growing, and I think you'll enjoy it. If you like me here, you're going to love me there. So we're talking about the final arguments, the closing arguments of the election, and it's very clear to me that the fascism argument is going to play out. Right? We talked about General Kelly's remarks, Mark Milley's remarks. We've talked about others who work for Trump's remarks about how he's got fascist tendencies. I watched J.D. Vance on Sunday with Jake Tapper on State of the Union and CNN. J.D. Vance, when you look up a guy who's enabled horrors in the world, you're going to see a picture of J.D. Vance. He's asked about fascist comments by Mark Milley and by General Kelly. And he's asked about how people like Mike Pence won't be voting for Donald Trump. And what is J.D. Vance's remarks? Well, these are people who wanted to push us into endless wars around the world. And that's why they're calling Trump a fascist, because they couldn't control Donald Trump. Well, one, I would argue that Donald Trump has said he wants to use our military, not abroad, to aid in the defense of democracy in places like Ukraine, but to use it to crush his political opponents at home in the United States of America. Now, that pushback was not happening in that interview, but Jake did actually do a pretty good job pushing back on J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, can look normal at times, but he is, I would say, as slick as they come when it comes to defending the ridiculous rhetoric coming out of the mouth of Donald Trump. And he keeps saying that he didn't say it. And Jake would read the quotes. This is what he said. Every time Donald Trump is given an opportunity to backtrack from his fascist statements, Donald Trump doubles down on it. And then J.D. Vance and other enablers like Lindsey Graham and others will go on national television and they will do backflips to defend themselves. I just keep asking myself every day, if John McCain was alive today, let's say John McCain was still alive today, what would John McCain think of Lindsey Graham? Would Lindsey Graham even be this, enabler, this pilot fish for Donald Trump? You know what a pilot fish is? You ever see a shark? You ever see a shark swimming along and there's a little fish swimming along with the shark? That's a pilot fish. If you attach yourself to a good shark like John McCain, you'll be a good pilot fish. You attach yourself to a fascist shark like Donald Trump, you'll be a fascist pilot fish. And that's what Lindsey Graham is. He might as well be Goebbels. He's out there, making up stories about Donald Trump, making up stories about his opponent. Now, he wouldn't say she was a communist or a fascist or a socialist. And then he tried to say that Donald Trump never said those things. He tried to say the Democratic rhetoric calling him a fascist is horrible. And then, ABC News played several clips of Donald Trump calling Kamala Harris a fascist, dangerous fascist, communist, socialist, un-American. America, we are in the home stretch now, baby. We are in the end game now. And time is running out. And it's time to decide, what kind of country do you want? The chaos that Donald Trump will bring as president, we've already witnessed it. We witnessed 4 years of the chaos. It was nonstop chaos. The chaos he will bring when he has a bunch of bootlicking Goombas around him who are going to just enable his every fascist desire. It's going to be worse. In fact, it's going to collapse our economy. You think things are bad economically right now? Slap a 20% tariff on everything coming into the United States indiscriminately. And we'll see how bad this economy can get. You think things are bad right now? When he starts locking up journalists and political opponents, what do you think that's going to do to our economy? When he starts deporting the people who are actually doing the work in this economy, what do you think that's going to do to this economy? I just hope that America understands. I hope that the voters understand. And by the way, I believe they will understand this. I've had a lot of conversations with Republicans, and I believe they get it. That even if they think Kamala Harris is going to be bad for some of their issues, they know there'll be 4 years from now, there'll be another election, and they'll have an opportunity to vote her out should they want to. That will not be the case with Donald Trump. It won't be the case. You won't have the same options, I think, 4 years from now. I think every day. I mean, do I continue being a critic? I mean, I would, in normal circumstances, I would say, okay, the other side won. Congratulations. Don't destroy the country. And I would be the loyal opposition, which I was, by the way, for 4 years during the Trump presidency. I didn't root against America during the 4 years of the Trump. I didn't even root against him. But I was critical of him when he was doing things that deserved criticism, which was pretty much every day of his presidency. And I plan on doing the same right now. But I do have my reservations about it. I doubt that there's anybody on the right that's out there right now saying, well, if Harris wins, maybe I better think about shutting down my podcast. But I know people on the left do. I know I do. I won't. We'll see what happens. It is definitely giving me pause. It is definitely giving me pause. Some of the rhetoric he's been saying. Listen to this. I'll be right back. I can't take this double standard anymore. I just can't. It's driving me crazy that it doesn't matter what Trump says or how he says it. when Kamala Harris says anything, it is, it is picked apart like it is a manifesto given by God. Donald Trump has been running for president for 8 years. The only plans he has ever given us was that he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it, something that did not happen. He didn't build a wall, and Mexico didn't pay for anything. And that he would put tariffs on everything that comes into the United States, resulting in a 20% tax on most of the things you enjoy every single day. Those are his plans. By the way, no details about any of those things, but that's what he's told us about his policies. He's also told us that he's going to jail his enemies this time, right? He's going to punish and persecute and go after his enemies. And he's told us this. And when right-wing media tries to clean up those comments to say, oh, come on, you didn't really mean that. He says, no, I meant it. Why aren't we parsing that apart? Why are we focused on the speck in Kamala Harris's eye and ignoring the forest growing out of Donald Trump's eye? I'm quoting the Bible, paraphrasing the Bible, but Donald Trump wouldn't do that because he's never read the Bible. I mean, he sold you Bibles made in China, but he's never read it. You think he would get that reference? I watched the CNN town hall last night. I thought she did a pretty good job. But here's the other thing. She showed up. Where's Donald Trump? Where's Donald Trump taking difficult questions from anybody and trying to answer them? Doesn't happen. So we'll parse, like for months, all we heard was, when is Kamala Harris going to do a real serious interview? Well, she's been doing a lot of serious interviews for the last 2 months. Lots of them. Donald Trump doesn't do any serious interviews. He does Fox and Friends, where they basically shine his shoes. Mr. President, why are you so good? And they try to clean up things that he said at his rallies that everybody's talking about. But they don't ask him anything real. There's no, deep thought questions. He's not going to get a question about what to do about Gaza and what to do about Israel back to back from Fox News or Newsmax or whatever podcast he goes on because they're right-wing nut frat boys. He ain't getting any of those questions. It ain't happening. Yet she goes and does an interview, and I got to hear, she was a little word salad on that from Democrats. I'm sorry. Let me just call time out. I get it. 10 years ago, we could have those conversations because those were the rules. We were all playing by the same rules. Those rules do not exist in American politics right now, particularly at the presidential level. They do not exist. Why is Kamala Harris playing by a set of rules that existed when candidates were normal, and Donald Trump playing by no rules at all? All the rules, there's no rule. No rules for him. Why do Democratic pundits feel like they need to point out her flaws? Do Republican pundits do that? I watched this guy on CNN. I'm forgetting his name. He's basically doing my act. I just want to be very clear. He's doing my Fox act. I'm almost positive. Scott Jennings. I'm almost positive. I know this. That Scott Jennings said, I'm going to go on CNN. I'm going to be the Chris Hahn of CNN. Right? He, without a doubt, is doing my act. He is completely in the bag for Trump, and he will not say anything bad about Trump. When he was asked about Trump's comments about Hitler's generals yesterday, he turned it into a conversation about college kids protesting. Wow, that's the Democratic Party. The heart of the Democratic Party is college kids protesting. The guy running for president is the guy who said the Hitler quotes. The kids on campus are not running for president of the United States. And they've been condemned when they are anti-Semitic by me, by Kamala Harris, by Joe Biden, by every major Democratic figure. Every single one of them. I get it. Why aren't Democrats as dedicated in their comments as Republicans are in their loyalty oaths to Trump when they are on national television. I love Axelrod. I think he's one of the most brilliant political minds of all time. And I think he was partially correct in his comments. They did not need to be said by him because we're playing by different rules. The rules do not exist. We do not need to parse her words or how she said them ever again because it doesn't matter. We're running against a maniac, and the rules have not applied to him. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Daily Rant. I am your host, Chris Hahn, at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Make sure you are subscribing to me on YouTube at The Aggressive Progressive on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button wherever you watch YouTube, probably on your phone, on your laptop, on your television, on your smart TV. Hopefully you're watching me there. I'm getting a lot of new subscribers. Hope you're enjoying seeing me in my office ranting and raving about politics every single day. And of course, I'm on News Nation all the time. So if you're not watching me on News Nation, you better start watching News Nation. There's like 12 days left before the election, and it is time for you to be watching News for All Americans on News Nation. All right. So again, the double standard is just, it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts when journalists are playing by these rules, but I get it a little bit. Like, I get why Anderson Cooper has to ask her tough questions and tough follow-up questions. I get it. That's his job. He's a journalist. I was yelling at the TV a little bit because the other guy would probably jail Anderson Cooper if he's given the opportunity, right? I mean, Donald Trump is not going to take a difficult question from a reporter. And given what he's been saying, it should be terrifying to think what he might do to journalists in his second term, right? It terrifies me. I have a daughter who's a journalist. I have been a critic of the president, the former president, and I will continue to be a critic of the former president if he should win, which he will not, by the way. But it is not something that I expect from Democratic pundits, right? I do not expect Democratic pundits to go out there and hold her feet to the fire like that on word. Look, you want to say she should be doing more interviews? Great, say that. But when she's doing one, when she's out there doing the work and the other guy's not even showing up, this was supposed to be a debate. The reason why it was a one-on-one town hall is because Donald Trump can't do a one-on-one town hall. Donald Trump can't go and take questions from ordinary people. And by the way, even if he did, he wouldn't answer them. He wouldn't even try to answer them. So let's be very, very clear what's going on there. So I didn't see any need for Axel. It got me mad. It got me really, really mad. And I love him. I do. David Axelrod gave us Barack Obama, right? He was his chief strategist. He's one of the most brilliant political minds in American history, in my opinion. But he didn't need to say that. He didn't need to parse her words. We're playing by a different set of rules than they are. Scott Jennings would never say that. Now, granted, Scott Jennings is not the political mind that David Axelrod is. I'm not comparing the two. But they are both pundits on CNN. And they are both out there doing their thing. I mean, I get called out for backing Harris on the air and not saying good things about Trump. But I don't really have a lot of good things to say about a guy who has promised to send the military after his political enemies, which, by the way, we're not enemies. I am not your enemy, Donald Trump. Neither is Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff or Anderson Cooper, for that matter. We are your political opponents, which is what we do in America. We have conversations and debates vigorously about the issues, and then they are decided at the ballot box, not at the point of a gun, not at a military tribunal, not by tanks in the street. That's what he is promising this country. Wake up. He is promising this country third world banana republic politics, and that is what we will get if we elect this man to 4 more years. He's not going to be surrounded by good people. You think he's going to have good Republicans around him? He's not. He's going to have bootlickers. That's it. And I know I've been saying that. Maybe this sounds like a repeat to you. It's not. We're getting closer to the election. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? Democrats still feel that they have to give honest critiques about their candidate. I'm going to give an honest critique about, well, she didn't want to answer that question. She kind of went into like a 12-minute word salad. No, she didn't. She didn't do that at all, in my opinion. If anything, she kind of danced around a few questions, which I don't know every politician in America who's ever ran for office ever has. I mean, they all have, all of them, all the time. Right? So what's wrong with that? In fact, that's a skill that a politician has, a skill that I don't have, right? Which is part of the reason why, I never won when I ran for office. I'm not the kind of guy who's very skillful at dancing around questions that, that I have an answer for. I have opinions. That's why I'm a pundit. I have strong opinions on things. I don't dance around the question. Maybe I pivot. I mean, I guess I do, right? If you watch me on News Nation, I pivot a little bit. But that's different. And I'm not running for office. I am not running for office. I'm just a pundit trying to get attention. That's what we do. So I don't know. We're a week and a half away from the election now. And I think it's time that if you've chosen a side, and I clearly have, and David Axelrod clearly has, it's time to not focus on the speck of dust in our own eye, our own candidate's eye, and make sure the conversation is focused on the forest of trees growing out of Donald Trump's eye. Okay, there's lots of imperfection in that man. Lots of un-American things coming out of his mouth every single day. Oh, Kamala Harris stumbled over her words. It's not the same. It shouldn't be given the same level of critique as what we see from Donald Trump. It just shouldn't be. And it is nonsensical to me that it does. It's nonsensical. So, wake up. We're in the home stretch here. Focus on what matters. Preserving democracy, protecting a woman's right to choose, and keeping this country the last great hope for freedom on earth. Because if we go away, what's left? Who is going to be the guardian of democracy, of justice, of freedom on this planet? I'm terrified that is a possibility. It should not be. It really shouldn't. I don't think it will be. I'm pretty confident that Kamala Harris is going to win. I've said it earlier in the show today. I've been saying it the whole time, and I have not budged from that. And I think that the data proves me right. We talked about that. Both the polling data and the census data. Take a good look at it. The Harris Democratic coalition is getting larger, and the Trump coalition is shrinking. And we could just look at the individuals who've come out and voted since 2016. Since Donald Trump became president in 2016, 91 million separate American voters have come out in 2018, 2022, 2020 to vote against the Trump agenda. And 81 million have come out to support it. Now, I know that's different than the numbers from the presidential election in 2020, but there are people who voted in midterms and who have died, and people get added and subtracted. It's complicated. But it's 10 million more. The anti-Trump coalition is the majority in this country, and I believe the anti-Trump coalition is showing up right now. They're already starting to vote. And more and more of them will vote as the days go by. Don't be alarmed that there are more Republicans showing up in early voting than they have in the past. Well, they've made a push for that. Good on them. That's what campaigns are about. Make it really hard for them to throw out all the early votes, right? So, look, we're going to win this. Fight hard. Don't sit around, worrying about it. Do something. Volunteer somewhere and help get out the vote, particularly if you're in a swing state. But even if you're not in a swing state, there are lots of organizations that you could register with, Vote Save America being a very good one. It's a podcast company that does not have me on, but I listen to them, and they have a great system for allowing people to volunteer in swing states. So check them out, or check out, something with the DNC and be active. Don't just sit around worrying. Do something, right? You know how Obama says, don't boo, vote, don't cry, work. All right, I'm going to remind you now, as I always do, to seek the truth, question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there, and I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again next week to tell you the truth as I see it. Next week's Election Day, baby. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for joining me on the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.